Hi, this is Judith Lautner of the John Lautner Foundation, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. On today's show, we're joined by one of the best-known New York design educators and influencers. Daniella Ohad of Daniella on Design brings us her take on the leading architects and interior designers of 2022. A former sergeant in the Israeli Military Intelligence Directorate, she graduated from Tel Aviv University and then moved to New York for a master's from FIT and a PhD from Bard. And now, his military service consisting of a dishonorable discharge from the Cub Scouts, your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thanks, Tom. In my defense, I was framed.
That's what they all say.
Our Cub Scout leader, a chain smoker named Bob, collected $1 each week for months from a dozen of us 11-year-olds to fund a jamboree, a.k.a. a field trip, to an Army base one weekend where hundreds of Cub Scouts from across North Carolina were going on a hike. All this money was put in a Hellmann's mayonnaise jar. Why, I have no idea. And the jar was passed around each meeting for the kids to put their dollars in. By then, there was well over 100 in ones in the jar, and one week I was designated to pass the jar around while Bob went outside to smoke, and then I put it back in the closet in the Cub Scout room. 15 minutes later, the Hellmann's jar was missing, and the Scoutmaster went ballistic, ordering us to empty our pockets and little backpacks like a Cub Scout strip search. I had maybe $20 in ones in my wallet from selling Jell-O packets at school, which was all the rage at the time, and that was enough evidence for the Cub Scout version of a court-martial, with Bob as judge and jury. I had to turn in my Cub Scout handbook and call my dad.
Oh, no.
Who was somewhat relieved he didn't have to drive me to Cub Scouts every week, and even happier not to drive 4 Cub Scouts to that Army base. Turns out, I heard at school a few weeks later, Bob's son Mark was on a spending spree at the school cafeteria, making it rain Snickers and Almond Joys for all his friends, back when they cost only 25 cents. Maybe Mark didn't do it, but what I remember most was that my dad believed me, and my paramilitary career, such as it was over. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs, and by Modernist realtor Angela Roll.
It's episode 9 in our ongoing space saga. And while orbiting SETI Alpha 6,
Try the eel.
Princess Angela Roll and her newly discovered brother, Brad Vader, hijack an Empire battle cruiser. With the Imperial crew mesmerized and captive in the shuttle bay, they fool the scanners at the Empire homeworld and attack in fighters that look just like Breuer's Wassily chairs and are equally as comfortable. Not. The Emperor threatens to burn the last known copy of Dwell unless Princess Angela and the modernist rebels retreat and stop criticizing the Empire's 5-story gray buildings with false balconies which are everywhere. That's her shooting those balconies. Back here on Earth, this century's Angela Roll is your heroine of modernist houses, using her architectural training to specialize in modernist real estate, advising buyers and sellers on everything from appropriate renovation to saving modernist houses from the bulldozer. Angela Roll is your special modern real estate agent. Reach her at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL. Or call 919-995-0550.
Thank you, Tom. Daniella Ohad is a design influencer, historian, educator, writer, talk show host, curator, and keynote speaker. She's committed to design education and has taught at the School of Visual Arts, Pratt, Parsons, Cooper Union, and the New York School of Interior Design. She speaks worldwide and has hosted events at AIA New York, the venerable 92nd Street Y, the talk show Spring Harvest Dialogues, the video series The Collector, and the Italian network Skyarte. She's been a member of the New York City Museum Acquisition Committees, and her blog, Daniella on Design, attracts hundreds of thousands of readers weekly. Welcome, Daniella.
Oh, hi, George. Thanks for the warm introduction. I was wondering how you're going to introduce me because I rarely know how to introduce myself. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here and to speak to you today from New York.
Before we get started on design, though, I understand your dad pioneered the rare fruit industry in Israel. What was that all about?
I know. I grew up on a fruit farm. It was so special, but it made me a fruit snob. And I am very, very particular about the fruits that I eat, and I am a fruit addict. So my father went in the 50s to California to study how to grow subtropical fruits. He did his undergraduate at Berkeley, and then he went to UCLA to do his master's, and he came back to Israel around 1957, and he started that industry because, Israel, he had to do a lot of research and scientific experimentation to make these fruits fit for the land.
The climate in Israel is similar to Southern California, is it not?
Very, very much so, and this is why he went to study there. But still, when I go back to Israel, which I do once a year, sometimes twice a year, and I walk on the farm, I feel like I'm walking in Avatar. I see fruit, and there are always new things from all over the world. It's just really exotic.
Well, I assume we're not talking oranges here. So what kind of fruits are these? And Daniella, what kind of fruit advice can you give us newbies about, what's the great fruit to be eating these days?
Okay, well, I'm not an advisor, but I want to tell you that when everyone around me ate oranges and apples and pears, I ate lychee nuts and macadamia nuts and kiwi and very exotic types of guavas and exotic types of berries from all over the world, star fruits and things like that.
Things that, especially back then, maybe weren't that common anywhere.
Even today.
Yeah.
Even today, yes. And passion fruit, yes.
So I guess, Daniella, if somebody wants to thank you, they probably shouldn't send a fruit basket.
Oh, absolutely. But it has to be very fresh, George.
Have you ever tried those Fruit Loops? I think Kellogg's make them.
Oh, come on, Tom.
Well,
That's the lowest of the fruit.
I am a fruit snob.
Yeah.
Daniella, you have done, in addition to so much more we could talk about, some documentaries on George Nakashima, Paul Evans, Frank Lloyd Wright, and Charlotte Perriand. Most of our listeners know Frank Lloyd Wright, but they don't know the rest. So tell us first about George Nakashima.
Oh, my God. You start from a very important moment in my life, really like a turning point, because I met George Nakashima when I was 25 years old, and I went to see him in his studio and home in New Hope, Pennsylvania. I was a newcomer at that time. I just had moved from Israel, and that really changed my life because I so fell in love with what he did. I fell in love with his lifestyle, with the furniture he crafted. I fell in love with his emotional and peaceful experience. George Nakashima was a trained architect, and he was born and grew up in Washington. And then he went to school. He did an undergraduate in forestry, but then he went to MIT and he studied architecture. And this was when he graduated, it was exactly the Depression, because he was born, I believe, in 1905 or something like that. So it was a Depression. Of course, he couldn't find any job building, so he went to Japan. And he lived there for a couple of years. And then when he came back to America, just like a year after he came back, the Second World War started with Japan, and him as an American Japanese with his family had to move to a camp. And this is when he started to learn how to make furniture in Idaho. So he made amazing, amazing furniture. But you know what is really more amazing about it, and that's really what made a difference in what I do as an educator. It's not just that he made furniture that looks great and feels great and very stylish. It's not about that. Because today, walk into a furniture store and you probably find in 90% of the furniture stores something that emulate what George Nakashima did. But what he did, he made it, he created it from a concept. It wasn't just about the look, it was the concept of his love story with nature, his love story with trees. And he said that every tree needs a second chance. And that was really his, mantra. And that the wood should not be touched. The wood should be really loved the way it is found in nature. And that's where his innovation.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it sounds like he was really trying to pull this range of emotions into his work.
Yes, and when I went there, I was 25, and I started buying furniture, and I was a young mother, and we started living with his furniture, adding one piece after another, and having endless family dinners around the table, and just live this way. And this is, I believe, that my passion and interest in that type of art, which has a lot of emotional contents, this is where it was born.
And what about Charlotte Perriand? A lot of people don't know her.
Oh, Charlotte Perriand, she was contemporary to Nakashima. Both of them were born I believe she was born in 1905 too, if I'm not mistaken. And both of them lived very, very long life. Charlotte Perriand was not an architect, but she loved architecture. She couldn't be an architect because she was a woman. And she was a woman in the mid-century, and especially a woman in the 20s could not be an architect. So she was working for Le Corbusier, and she created his most famous furniture. She was brilliant in the way that she perceived spaces and furniture, and the two of them were very, very contemporaries. One more thing, they both loved Japan. Nakashima lived in Japan. I wasn't even thinking about it until I'm telling you. Nakashima was living in Japan, and she was living in Japan almost around the same time. And both of them admired Le Corbusier and modernism, so there was a lot in common.
Now, when did you start up your immensely popular blog?
I don't remember, George, anymore. Seriously, I don't remember. I think it was something like maybe 12 years ago, something like this. And at that time, blogs were not as popular as they are today. I think now they are no longer as popular anymore with the social media. And I remember that I did a movie, a film, a documentary, and the director, he said to me, you're doing so many interesting things. Every day you meet amazing people. You go to galleries, you go to museums, you read books. You are so into the world of design. Why don't you share it? This is how it started.
And you can go online and see video of you talking with different people and moderating panels. And it's wonderful to see you working with these groups of design professionals. You get to do that a lot, don't you?
Yes, I do, because, George, first of all, I'm an educator. This is what I do. But what is so interesting about my career today is that education has moved to so many different directions away from the regular traditional education. So when I came out of school, when I went to FIT and I studied decorative arts, and that was about, let's say, 1991, is when I graduated. I went to teach in school. I went to teach at Parsons, and it was very traditional. But today, it's different. Today, you can educate the public, and you can educate through social media, and you can educate through talks that I do in various platforms. And it makes my life more interesting.
Who are some of the interesting people that you've had on these panels?
Oh, my God. Who are so many people. You know, George, what I do, I look what's happening in this world, in the world of architecture and design. And the people that I respect and the people that I become intrigued with, those are the people that I want to talk to, that I want to interview, to do conversations. So, for example, I've started 2 years ago a program called The Legends, where every week I interview a person who is a legend in the world of design. So the first 2 seasons were collecting design, the legends. So I brought curators and collectors and auction people and gallerists. And now in the last season and this season, it's called Interior Design, The Legends. So in that program, I bring the people that I believe that they are instrumental in defining what interior design today. Because, you know, when I go to, and I'm invited to do sometimes keynote speaking or things like that, and I'm going to college, and I walk into a class of interior design, and I ask them, so, what is interior design of the 21st century? And, oh my God, nobody can tell. What is it? Can you define it? Yes, you can define it. So this is where I come, and I am speaking to the people that define the field. And through that, I can learn how it looks. As a historian, as someone that can define today the contemporary. Because in, let's say, 100 years from now, someone is going to write a book, Interior Design, 2000 to 2022. What are they going to write? My role as historian and also a lot of oral history, what you do is to really define and to bring the voices of these people who make very important contribution to design culture.
So I'm curious, what is design in 2022?
Oh, I was going to tell you, just come and take my class. George, I cannot tell you what it is, but what I can tell you is that, and you'll be very surprised, because when you open a design magazine, for example, for interiors, and you see that many different things, right? So how do we define? They all look very different. However, you'll be surprised that it's really the same. You'll be surprised that the people that are instrumental in this field, they're all realizing very similar concepts, because these are the concepts of the zeitgeist. These are the concepts of the spirit of our time. And if you want me to give you examples...
Please.
Right, you need some example. First of all, they all have a respect to sustainability and history. Okay, they all have a way of looking at spaces as curators. That was not before 2000, by the way. That's a 2000 thing.
That seems to be the verb of the decade, is everybody wants to be a curator of something.
Correct, and also in here, what is a curator? In the 1980s or 90s, you could enter a showroom, or you could enter a very good, fine furniture shop or department store, and you could create really good interior. You can't do it today. It's not going to work.
How come?
Today you have to have a curator mind. You have to bring your own personality, but you also have to bring your knowledge in history, in traditions, in materials, in technologies, and you have to put things together that are going to be personal. Everybody wants to have a unique home. Nobody wants to have the same. In the 70s, it wasn't like that. But today it is. And the role of the interior designer is to deliver that product, that very personal way of living. But they have to know their clients. They have to learn not just their taste, but they also have to learn their pattern of life. They have to learn their history. They have to learn their memory, things like this. I remember that there were times when people only wanted new things. They didn't want anything to carry from their grandparents. That's not the case anymore. People want to tell a story. Good interior space has to tell a story, has to have a narrative.
When you're doing your classes, are the people coming other interior designers primarily, or are they clients of interior designers or prospective clients, people who want to outfit their own places?
No, everything. First of all, now COVID is a little bit different, but in regular years, I used to have at least 10,000 people listening to some sort of program that I do. I have professionals who are architects, interior designers, but I also mostly people who want to deepen their knowledge, deepen their passion, people that are interested in that knowledge that I can bring to them, and that to them design is culture. If someone is okay with very mediocre type of design, that they're not going to be interested in what I deliver.
Okay. When I turn on cable, I'll look at HGTV, Daniela, I'm always surprised that you're not on there. I mean, it seems like you're a natural at having your own show. You're so glamorous and well-informed. You look like a countess coming out of the Italian villa. When are we going to see you on HGTV?
Oh, my God, George, that's my dream. My dream is to have my own TV show, and I did a beautiful pilot with an Italian production company. That's my dream, because I tell you why. Last night, in fact, I watched a television design show, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I watched it as a homework about someone I'm going to interview soon. And I was looking, and what was missing there is exactly what I can bring to the table, and I tell you what it is. It is the depth to inspire people who are designers, who make furniture, who create interiors, to inspire them to look beyond what you see on the surface. Because if you want to be a successful fashion designer, a successful interior designer, architect, if you're going to look at magazines, if you're even going to look at books, you're not going to get anywhere. It has to come from within. You have to bring your own story, your own life experience in order to create something special.
Well, HGTV, if you're listening, Daniella on Design, that's your next big hit.
Okay, George, I'm going to tell them that you are my reference.
I am the reference, yes. We are the king and queen makers right here on U.S. Modernist Radio.
Okay, that sounds good.
Now, Daniella, there are no great buildings without great clients. And a few years ago, you created a course about the patrons who commissioned some of the most interesting buildings of the 20th century. Which of these patrons was the most interesting to explore?
Wow, I'm just working on it right now because I'm curating a show called The Female Voice in Modern Design, 1950 to 2000. And one of the talks that I would like to conduct is about women patrons. But it's not only then, it's also today. Who are the patrons? The patrons are those who want something more. But not only this, patrons are those who believe in design culture and who believe that design is an engine of progress. And they are, let's look at the Hamptons, for example. So popular, overly popular. People build there all the time. You drive there and you see building, construction. But most of these houses are shingle-style houses. Why shingle-style? Because this was the style of the place. But the people who patronize houses like that, they do it because they don't want to dare. They're very careful about their investment, okay, because it is more safe to have real estate that is designed in a traditional way. They are not very visionary. So you need those people to make architecture speaks. Otherwise, there will not be great architecture. Only with the great patrons. And patrons are so important.
I can think of two in particular. There was Edith Farnsworth of the Farnsworth House and Aileen Barnsdall out in L.A. Who are some more modern patrons you've run across?
Modern, you mean of today?
Yes.
You know, a lot of the people don't want to be identified by their names as long as they're still alive. But I can tell you, for example, about a house that was designed by Diller and Scofidio by a man who is a visionary design patron. He's involved with museums and collections and stuff like that and publications. But I cannot tell you names because they don't want to be known by their names.
Sure. Well, let's go in another direction, perhaps. Who are some of the architects that are getting great clients these days for their work, new patrons of this era?
Wow. I can tell you that if I would build a house today, I would take Tom Kundig, an amazing architect, is Lee Mindel. Also, Vincent van Diossen from Belgium. There are lots of amazing architects, a lot, who are innovative, who have their own path, who have their own language, who are visionaries. There are lots and lots and lots of them. But it's not like, with Edith Farnsworth, by the way, thinking about her, who would want to become a patron after you read her story? You don't want to be known.
A lot of people don't know that Israel, particularly around the Tel Aviv area, is a hotbed for modernism. And I believe you did some of your PhD work on hotels in Tel Aviv?
I did. It's true. Yes, you did such a great homework, George.
Our research team has been on this for weeks, Daniela.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, a very particular segment of Tel Aviv's construction during the 30s was done in the modernist idioms, particularly by people who at that time in the early 30s came from Germany. Architects who came from Germany, patrons who came from Germany, industrialists, and they came with the knowledge of the modern movement. They were educated, they were trained in Germany, and this is when they built Tel Aviv this way. And for many years, like in many other places in the world, it was very rundown and buildings did not age very well. But today, I can tell you Tel Aviv is like sparkling in whiteness and beauty, and there are a lot of new rules about what you can and what you can't do, and preservation of historical monuments.
What are some of the hotels that are great examples of this in Tel Aviv? People might want to visit on their own.
When I first started working on my PhD on hotel design, I was thinking to myself, this is such a great theme because what I'm going to do is just go and visit hotels and have a good time. That's what I thought. But at the end, none of these hotels have survived. So.
Oh, really? They're all gone?
Yeah. All of them were gone, yeah. They all were gone because it was different era. The scales of hotels were different. The type of accommodation were different, and that completely changed, I would say, in the 60s, and particularly in the 70s and into the 80s. So none of them, unfortunately, survived.
They were built around the same time approximately as those on Miami Beach, right? They're very similar?
Miami Beach is more 40s.
Okay.
And Tel Aviv was more 30s.
More 30s.
I am not very objective, so I can tell you I love what was done in Tel Aviv much more than what was done in Miami. Tel Aviv was built on the sand as a white city, pristine, but it also had a strong ideological component, and that's really what brings everything together.
Okay. Last question, Daniela. Who were some of the rising stars of interior design in 2022? You get to meet dozens of them.
Are you asking me to tell you names right now?
Yes, we want the names and phone numbers and email addresses. No.
Okay.
Who are some of the rising stars?
Well, I'll tell you some. Okay, and each one of them has their own different agenda, but I think together they really brings interior design to where they are. Well, I would like to mention India Madavi. I would like to mention Pierre Jovanovic from France, Via Grinet from London. I don't want to forget Olivier Dweck from Brussels.
Okay.
I don't want to forget Bill Sawfeld from New York and Commune Design. Like, I'm going to tell you two offices in Los Angeles. One is Commune Design and one is Clements Design. I don't want to forget Tony Grau, my friend, who is brilliant. And I don't want to forget Brian McCarthy and Lee Mindell and Charles Zana and Studio Di Mori from Milan. I don't want to forget the Campana Brothers and Raman Williams. So there are so many.
I tell you what I don't want to forget, Daniela.
What?
I don't want to forget you're introducing me to Sugarfish, an omakase sushi restaurant in New York, which I've been to several times since we had lunch together. It's pretty fabulous.
It's my thing. I love it. Oh, my goodness. I eat there at least twice a week.
You can learn more about Daniella Ohad at DanielaOnDesign.com. Thanks for joining us.
George, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure and so much fun to meet you like this online.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. And by Modernist Realtor Angela Roll. Okay, let's wrap up, Tom.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 15,000 significant modernist houses, and access 4 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Rogue archivist Carrie Cesarino researches our guest while waiting for her kids to get over COVID and go back to school. Just 2 more days to go and, now her husband has it. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another immaculately designed, brilliantly curated, Mark Stole the Mayonnaise Jar edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.
I was framed.